Hello everyone, welcome to yet another day in the clown decade, the decade where things are only going to get worse before they get better. And I started off this year thinking, you know what, I think this is going to be the turn in the clown decade, I think this is where things are going to get better. And then it turns out loose cannons can ruin all my optimism in just a single tweet. So after a few weeks of stories that I have covered before where effectively it looks like Farage, Reform and Elon Musk are all parallel in what they actually want, Elon Musk starts talking an awful lot about Tommy Robinson. Reform find this absolutely no use whatsoever because siding with Tommy Robinson effectively killed UKIP. And it's part of the reason Farage literally left UKIP because they were focusing massively, pretty much exclusively, on attacking Islam. And we're signing up with Tommy Robinson, who frankly, whenever he's part of anything, seems to absolutely kill it. And so Farage said on GB News at the inauguration he will explain to Elon Musk that perhaps things can't quite as they look when it comes to Tommy Robinson. Now, opinions on Tommy Robinson all aside, I'm not particularly getting into that today. I am here specifically just to talk about the political tact that comes with Tommy Robinson, and just putting it bluntly, allying with Tommy Robinson in any way, or even showing him sympathy, frankly, is electoral kryptonite. The amount of hardcore Tommy fans will never ever make up for the amount of people who frankly despise Tommy Robinson, even on the right wing, for what I can see is perfectly legitimate reasons. But as I say, this is not the video to get into detail of that. This is the video about this tweet. The Reform Party needs a new leader. Farage doesn't have what it takes. I cannot for the life of me tell you why Elon Musk said this, outside of he's got a touch of the tism, probably has ADHD, and clearly just fires from the hip on his own website, which, to be honest with you, I can't really blame him for. However, this tweet caused an absolute stir, and frankly, I mean, I'll throw out what I think was going on here at the time, though as time has gone on, I'm less convinced by it. But my initial thoughts were, well, Elon Musk, Nigel Farage and Reform are in good contact with each other. It was all over the news, it made The Guardian panic a bit. And so effectively what I thought this was effectively a bit of a loyalty test for people. Effectively, I thought Elon Musk may have been helping Reform actually in a 4D chess move to say, basically, I don't think Farage is very good, do you agree with me? And anyone agreeing with him is a massive signal to Reform to say, don't bother with these people. Frankly, they're not to be trusted. Now, that's not to say, frankly, that you cannot criticise Farage. That's not the point here. The point is that, as I've covered in many videos before, there's an awful lot of criticism of Farage from the right that is frankly just based on total and complete lies. Weird accusations that the party isn't democratic enough, despite the fact that half the membership can literally oust a leader. Tories and Labour can't do that, by the way. Plus, that got a majority vote at conference, so clearly the members who were politically active were fine with it. I imagine everyone else who joined Reform, in the full knowledge that Nigel Farage was leader, were happy for him to be leader as well. I mean, they gave him 25 quid for it. There's nonsense about him cozying up to Islam. There is complete nonsense about him softening his positions on, say, immigration. It's just all nonsense. It's stuff I've gone through before. And it's stuff that, frankly, I think Elon Musk is hearing from his particular circles, because his particular circles are, frankly, 2 steps away from the type of people making these nonsense accusations, and so Elon Musk is just taking them as truth, when they're not. And so because of all this, I imagine that has possibly trickled down to actually he now isn't a fan of Farage for some reason. Which, given that ever since Reform have been talking to Elon Musk, they've basically had nothing but nice things to say about him. As I say, that's why I just found it too surprising for it not to be a 4D chess move, but as I say, time has gone on and I am less convinced about that now. But anyway, let's go through what some people had to say about this. So a common theme throughout this is that foreigners clearly just do not understand how the British electorate and British Parliament actually work, and that is accentuated by the Malaysian who thinks he's American despite never having lived there, Ian Miles Chong, saying that Farage is a spineless worm and it needs to be someone like Paul Golding. Paul Golding is the head of Britain First, and again, if it was supposed to be Paul Golding heading Reform, Britain First would be doing an awful lot better than it is. But as much as I appreciate Britain First work in doing their citizens' journalism on the hotels filled with asylum seekers or illegal migrants, Outside of that, I don't see them as particularly useful. So yeah, a common theme of this is that there's an awful lot of people that just do not understand the British electorate. I can understand it from a foreigner's point of view, but there's some British people here that just don't get it. Speaking of which, Connor Tomlinson then waded into the conversation saying, when I wrote this article in November, it was that frankly terrible article, Guardian level article, I will say, which again, as I say, I've been through this all before, that it's just nonsense criticisms of Farage. Like, there are genuine criticisms of Farage you can make. We went through it yesterday on Laughing at the Guardian with Stelios from the Lotus Eaters. There's fair criticisms of Farage, but the online right seem incapable of actually parsing what is good and bad criticism of Farage. But as I say, I've gone through Connor's article before. I'm not doing it a fourth time. I was told I wasn't being enough of a team player and that my points were garbage. Yeah, frankly. But I've always concerned about a perceived softening by some of reform because I feared it would lead to the base to lose faith and look elsewhere. And again, since then, he wrote it in November. Reform have had like 50,000 more members, and not only that, they are now polling at about 100 seats, let alone 20 odd percent. They are now getting actual seats, hundreds of them. Better than the Lib Dems ever did. I know it's not an election, but still, this is polling that I have never seen in my life, and I don't think many people have seen in their life. And here we have people saying, oh, don't you see, by going down this path that you've been going on for months and still went down, you're going to lose support. And they've only gained it. So yeah, it is garbage criticism, Connor, and you need to realise that. I foresaw conflict, which, again, has only really come about today because of Elon Musk, which could be avoided by taking as strong as popular a stance on immigration as Rupert Lowe or Donald Trump. And this is where it's just stupid. Oh, reform aren't hard enough on immigration. Look at Rupert Lowe, the man who wrote most of the reform contract. People don't realise this, but Rupert Lowe actually has quite a say in reform, and as far as I can tell, is about as much of reform, at least in the back end, as Nigel Farage is. But nobody seems to appreciate that. They just keep saying, love Rupert Lowe, hate Farage, reform are doomed. And it's like, they all agree with each other. What are you talking about? I wanted that conflict to be avoided, well, to make your criticism better. The above opinion by Musk has proved those fears to be true. I wouldn't say so. Honestly, we'll get to it at the end, but this episode by Musk seems to have just strengthened people's resolve with Farage, frankly. Reform must stop fearing the inevitable false accusations of racism from a hostile press to become the party Britain needs. Again, there seems to be I've talked about it before, but a massive Americanisation of most people over at the Lotus Eaters. Again, I talk to them on occasion. I have them on my streams. I would say I was less harsh about this position that they take, but as time has gone on and I've tried to explain it to them over and over, it just gets frustrating, To be fair, I've not had direct contact with Connor. It's more people like Josh and Stelios and Harry that I talk to, but this opinion needs to, not be disavowed. It just needs to stop being made, because it's not accurate, it is not a decent analysis, and we can see that by the results of them effectively ignoring you and constantly doing better than ever. Again, this was a meme that was made by a fan of mine, Dead End Satellite, and posted to the Worcester Club Discord. You should join it as well, by the way. Where, as you can see, it's just me being a soyjack pointing at Reform's contract constantly, saying, this is their plan, this is their contract, this is their policies. Can you please name me something that Nigel Farage has gone against here? And I never seem to get a decent answer. In fact, pretty much the only one I've ever had is from Josh, who, again, I consider an honest actor, who said, he complimented me, of course, because we're such great friends, but he says his main objection is that I think the policies that were in that meme and in the contract don't go far enough to address the problem legal and illegal migration have caused. To which I then replied saying, I don't really know how much further you need to go with illegal migration than saying you will all literally be deported. And I don't know realistically, because I have to say this in the second tweet, that I don't know realistically what you can actually do and promise in a 5-year period, other than saying we will allow essential migration for the health service and what have you. Because, saying we're going to keep the NHS running is a vote winner because the British people are mental. But not only that, obviously bringing down immigration by 1 million was its peak. Let's be more fair now. It's closer to 700,000. But even that, bringing immigration down by 700,000, I don't know how much further you want to go unless you want a complete stop of the influx. But again, looking at the electorate don't seem to want to go that far. And even then, there's other things in the contract, such as effectively welfare chauvinism, where they're not going to allow any access to the NHS unless you can prove you're a British citizen and things like this. That it goes just beyond that, things that are going to stop pull factors and make push factors for immigrants who don't really want to be here and are here to effectively colonise. Stuff that both Rupert Lowe and Nigel Farage have said. But as I say, there seems to be this ignorance from the online right, willful ignorance, I will say, for some people. Not necessarily Josh and Connor, where there just doesn't seem to have been the due diligence and research into what Reform's positions actually are. And effectively, it's all become a bit vibes-based, and effectively they're trusting the word of, frankly, their friends, which I can understand trusting the word of your friends, but really, let's actually have a look into what is being said and compare it to what they have said in the past and what is in their contract. And as I say, as I've been saying for months actually, what you'll find is that there is barely any contradiction. Anyway, Tommy Robinson's team decided to weigh in on this as well, having possibly the worst opinion of every single one I've seen, which is Reform need to have Ben Habib as their leader, who just answers on a postcard for why I don't like Ben Habib. Effectively, he whinged about Reform for months while still being part of it, and then left, and then decided to effectively keep lying about Reform after. Because as I say, opinions that Josh and Connor have say, a lot of it comes from Ben Habib, who frankly just doesn't know what he's talking about. The only point I'd say he has a point on is that Brexit wasn't done properly, but he doesn't understand why that's not being bleated by Reform an awful lot, and it's because to most people's minds Brexit has been done, and now it's all on Parliament to actually get stuff that Parliament need to do done. It's just confusing the messaging effectively. But stuff like democratising the party and they're not hard enough on immigration, it's just all nonsense. And effectively he left in a huff because he didn't win a seat and therefore didn't have a place in the higher echelons of Reform because MPs need to take those positions. And so he went off in a huff and effectively is counter-signalling Reform at every chance he can have. Whereas you look at other people who lost their high positions in Reform and they thought, oh, fair enough, yeah, I didn't win a seat. And I understand that you actually need people as MPs to be in these positions. So, okay, I'll still continue supporting Reform because I understand the reality of the situation. Ben had the opposite reaction and effectively just seems like a spoiled child. Unlike Nigel, Ben will not kowtow to the political or media establishment. He recognises the problems we face and is not afraid to speak his mind on them. Ben would introduce real policies that would work for the British people. I don't know what the hell people mean by this at all. As I've been through many times, the Reform contract, I like 90% of it. The stuff I don't like is the reform to the House of Lords that makes it an elected second chamber. Okay, that would be better than what we have now, but I'd rather go back to a pre-1997 version of the Lords where it's still an unelected chamber and it's basically full of hereditary peers and some life peers. And even with the life peers, I'd rather we make it rarer we hand them out and they become hereditary peers, because having people who need the country to keep running for generations because their sons will be, well, it was sons, it would probably be daughters as well at this point, sons and daughters to carry on with their power in the country, of course they're going to be incentivised to keep it going. You know, I used to be a bit more of a cringe Democrat on that question, but at this point, no, I completely understand it. You need an interest to keep the country running beyond your own generation, and frankly, when it comes to MPs, they don't typically care more than a week of what's going to be said in the media, and that's why they make short-term decisions that are terrible. But either way, realistically, from everything I've heard from Habib, what's the main difference going to be? He's going to be much harsher on Islam and possibly go beyond net zero immigration. But again, I don't really understand what the appetite for the British people beyond that is. I don't really see it outside of online right echo chambers, frankly, and I said it yesterday as well on Laughing at the Guardian. I want to strap down most people in the online right, distant right, whatever you want to call them, and just have a slideshow saying, this is reality, you know, stuff I talk about, frankly, this is what you say, there are massive contradictions that you need to be able to pass, and I'm afraid reality takes precedence over your dreams. And Ben Habib will be one of these people I have to keep informing about this. Reform are at a crossroads, apparently. They're not, by the way. They're not at all. They are firmly, as they have been for the past year, where they want to be. Continue as a limited company dictatorship under Farage, again, total nonsense about how the party structure works, or fully democratise. It's more democratised than any other party in Britain that I can see. Bring in a leader, Ben Habib, who will represent the working class and set our country on the right path. This is another myth that a lot of Americans seem to have swallowed up. Tommy Robinson doesn't really represent the working class as a whole. In fact, there's plenty of working class people I know that absolutely hate him because a lot of people seem to think that he represents the working class, whereas, Tommy Robinson, we're talking warts and all here, not a very good person, really. Drug addict, frankly quite violent. Working class people don't want that representing them. I know people that have not liked Carl for some time because he keeps saying the voice of the working class will be coarse, and you will see this quite a lot, but the working class in Britain, if you even buy the Marxist class structure that people talk about, like most things, they actually have a plurality of opinion. There's many who vote Tories because they like Thatcher, there's many who constantly vote Labour because they work in the public sector. It's a plurality of opinions, and overall, who do they vote for more? Labour. Do you think Tommy Robinson is in favour of Labour? Do you think that Tommy Robinson, the man who is ardently against Labour, represents the working class who mostly vote Labour? The answer is of course not. So that is another lie that just needs to be dispelled, but it's kind of reliant on, frankly, Tommy's ability to make money. Anyway, the choice is now. Yeah, well, there's not a choice. This is all just nonsense. There's no way that Reform are going to change their structure beyond what was changed at the conference. This whole episode effectively has been the chance for people that Reform should frankly not trust to try and sow more right-wing division. Why? Well, I really can't come up with a better idea than just, money. At least for some people. In someone like Ben's case, it's effectively acting like a scorned ex-girlfriend. And there are accounts, again, singing the praises of Ben Habib, or he's speaking the truth about Tommy Robinson and he's a political prisoner. Frankly, by the way, I'm not going to go into detail here, but it's basically just not true. He pleaded guilty to the libel case, and that's what he's in prison for 18 months for. Now, I've seen people say, how's that fair when paedophiles get let off? And I agree, the paedophiles should be in jail for life, such as Hugh Edwards. However, all of these punishments are within sentencing guidelines. Again, they're a bit of a meme too. I don't see reason to free Tommy Robinson just because other people have leniency against them. I see it as more of a reason to be much harsher on the people who the system has been lenient to within the sentencing guidelines. Either way, it's a big long list of things Ben Habib has said. The reason I'm quickly covering this is because guess what? Elon Musk once again quote tweets this. This American account, by the way, once again, these outsiders looking in who get most of their information from not trusting mainstream sources in Britain and taking online right sources at their word when, frankly, they are not doing their due diligence over the past few months. And Elon Musk is just eating it all up once again. Accurate description of what really is going on by Ben Habib with Tommy Robinson. It's just not true. There's plenty of alternative sources criticising Tommy Robinson with decent criticism of him, debunking his documentaries, going through some things that his crew have been doing that are frankly disgusting. Again, this is not the video where I go through that. What I am saying, though, is that please just stop taking people on the internet at their word. We don't do it with leftists. I don't know why we would do it with rightists as well. People on the internet lie, people on the internet have agendas, people on the internet will just do whatever they can to get more likes and retweets. It used to be pretty exclusive to the left because the right wing ended up getting banned. Well, now Elon Musk has allowed the right wing to be unleashed, which I'm very happy about, don't get me wrong, but it's running into similar problems that the left are running into and making this entirely dreamlike utopian world that they always keep demanding, and they say Ben Habib will deliver it, for instance, and normal people outside of these Twitter bubbles basically don't know who Ben Habib is and would basically say, are you mad? What are you talking about? And there doesn't ever seem to be appreciation of this, but obviously Elon Musk is firmly in this bubble, and it's created just this day-long problem that just didn't need to be created. And in another long post Ben Habib made, planting his flag for Tommy Robinson, Elon Musk once again says, free Tommy Robinson now. Again, because a lot of American commentators especially are either within the circles of Tommy Robinson, or hate the mainstream media to the extent where they will just believe the opposite of what they say, which I would argue is a really stupid position to have. The mainstream media managed to have such a stranglehold on the narrative because they actually do tell the truth about, I don't know, 60% of the time. And again, America really need to understand Tommy Robinson really isn't popular outside of his hardcore supporters, which probably amount to, I don't know, a few 100,000 people in Britain. If that, I don't know. It's not enough people to win an election when an awful lot of people on the right don't like him either. Again, this isn't the video to really get into Tommy Robinson. All we really need to know at this point is that Tommy Robinson is not a popular man, despite the fact that, yes, he can get an awful lot of people to protest. But as I say, these are his sycophantic lot, which will effectively drop everything in their life to follow Tommy. But outside of the type of people who do that, you probably have some people that are tacitly on his side but wouldn't go out of their way to... I wouldn't base their vote over whether a political party like him or not, frankly. And then pretty much everyone else in Britain has an active dislike of him. Reasons for that, as I say, don't really matter now, but what I am saying and making clear is that Elon Musk is clearly in this echo chamber, that think Tommy's this popular guy who's going to have statues made of him after he dies from working class communities, and frankly I just don't see that happening ever, even if we end up winning. And on the subject of Ben Habib, the man is just, as I say, a scorn ex-girlfriend. Despite all this absolute nonsense he's been coming out with that I've covered in this video, Cernovich, who is another guy who's within the Tommy/Andrew Tate circles, he came out with this tweet. Nigel Farage would stumble around drunk at Trump DC, red-lipped and impish. He's an unimpressive stature in person, no physical presence or vibe. In a room of men, he wouldn't stand out nor be asked to lead. No surprise he had the spirit of a weasel, which I can just say with conviction is absolute nonsense. But what does Ben Habib do? Oh, why do you say he has the spirit of a weasel? I followed you, so please DM me. Thank you. And it's just the most pathetic, I want all the gossip I can get on Farage ever, so that every time I'm on GB News I can have another go about him. He's effectively brought out as the type of right-winger that everyone can laugh at for GB News, because the right-wing are very aware that they have idiots on their side, unlike the left wing, and we let them have their say, and effectively every time they come out it just makes people dislike them more, and as we will go through, actually seems to just strengthen the loyalty to reform in Farage. That is effectively what the result of this day was, by the way, because the general reaction from pretty much everyone who wasn't wedded to the left and isn't in these online right bubbles was effectively this Tom Harwood reaction. Christ on a bike, bonkers. Yet this just seemed mad. This seemed very, ill-timed, and not only ill-timed, just moronic. And the typical reaction on the left was effectively celebration. The most professional coming from a thread of Lewis Goodall of the newsagent, saying, on the day that Farage and Tice have taken to the airways to defend him, Musk says reform needs a new leader. Yeah, which is why it just seems mad to literally everyone, but as I say, the left wing are happy about this because it looks like there's a schism in the right, which, to be honest, as I say, the result seems to be the opposite. Big moment, no Musk money for reform, at least while Farage is leader. Cue the right saying Musk should butt out of British politics. By the way, absolutely no one on the right has said that. That is just a left-wing projection. And finally, we'll quickly go through Farage's tweet as well, but Farage making the astute move available to him. Musk's money would have been useful. More useful still would be more moderate Conservative voters to back him, which they won't do if there is any hint of an association with Robinson. I mean, we'll just go into Nigel's tweet now. Well, this is a surprise. Elon is a remarkable individual, but on this I'm afraid I disagree. My views remain that Tommy Robinson is not right for reform, and I never sell out my principles. Which, by the way, it is true. I don't know where this nonsense that Nigel Farage sold out and that he's backtracked on his positions came from. I mean, they're probably not the same as they were 20 years ago, sure, but who holds the same positions as 20 years ago? But overall, the spirit of his positions are basically the same. Immigration needs to come down and be less ridiculous. We need to have a less socialist state. Sovereignty needs to be put firmly into Parliament and along with the Crown. Nothing from the outside, such as the EU, should be influencing us. They're his main positions, and there are people saying, oh, he's sold out and things like this. Just total nonsense. He's never liked Tommy Robinson. As, again, I need to remind everyone, most people in the UK have never liked Tommy Robinson. He may have done useful things in the past, but at this point, he is nothing short of a liability. And people were also saying, oh, why are you bringing up Tommy Robinson? Who says this is about Tommy Robinson? This is obviously about Tommy Robinson. Elon has been going on about it for days. Nigel Farage keeps being asked about Tommy Robinson and has to keep distancing himself from him because guess what happened to UKIP? Oh, they crashed and burned after they started associating with Tommy Robinson. What lesson do you learn from that? Never associate with Tommy Robinson. It's just absolute nonsense. If you are an insurgent right-wing party, you can't do things that are going to pull the rug from under you. It's just stupid. It's like walking into rakes. What's the point? You get the approval of some people on the online riot. How many people is that in total? How many votes does that lead to gaining? I don't know, maybe tens of thousands? How many votes are you going to lose? Potentially millions. It's just not worth it. Anyway, party chairman Zaya Yusuf was also being quite astute about this. As a tech entrepreneur, I consider Elon Musk to be by some distance the greatest entrepreneur of all time, and I'd largely agree. There's not many people that have caught literal rockets from the sky. I'll be forever grateful for all he has done and will do for humanity, but my views are unchanged. I respectfully but firmly disagree with his assessment. No politician has done more for British politics over the last 3 decades than Nigel Farage, which is just absolutely true. The man gave us Brexit. The man then forced us to go to Boris Johnson. Okay, in the long term, it turns out that wasn't very good, but at the time, it seemed to be the right move because he was clearly the type of person who looked like he was going to move the Tories right. He didn't. Lesson learned. Don't trust the Tories again. It's fine. He has doubtless been the most impactful British politician of our lifetime. Basically undeniable at this point. He has a unique and unmatched understanding of the British electorate because he loves the British people. And again, he is the only person who has managed to get a alternative party anywhere close to undermining the two-party system. Anywhere close. Yeah, you've had the SDP in the past, and the last time, really, that you've had anyone threatening to ruin the two-party system was Labour, who effectively just replaced the Liberals, and then you have another two-party system instead. Odds are the same thing will happen, but my God, I'm not being funny. If you replace the two-party system with Reform and Conservatives, then that's the two-party system, you will see things move so right it'll make your head spin. And as Zia Yusuf points out, that is why despite being an MP for 7 months, he is now the bookmaker's favourite to be the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. That's true, by the way. I covered that in my last video. It's just ridiculous to say when Reform have all this momentum, when Reform have now added 50,000 or something people to their membership over the last month. They are still rising in the polls. The latest polls have them getting 100 or more seats. It's just ridiculous to say there needs to be a change of tact. Why does there need to be a change of tact? It's working. What they are doing is working. Either the online right are just being willfully ignorant and pulling the cotton wool over their eyes because they want to be right about everything, or they are trying to disrupt on purpose. I have no idea which it is. I have no idea why people like Carl Benjamin do what they do, and my God, I have something to end on with him. But the fact of the matter is that I need a damn better reason for Nigel Farage needs to be replaced than just, oh, it's just vibes. Because that's mainly the reason I'm seeing, oh, I don't like Nigel Farage's vibe. He's not defending Tommy Robinson like I'd like him to. And honestly, if these people got their way, we would have nothing but Labour and Tories for the rest of our lives. Is that what you want? Because that's what you're going to get. And it just makes it all the more embarrassing when these online right echo chamberists pipe up. Lawrence Fox, your party is finished. Let me just point out how finished this party is. This is the seat projection for the latest polls. I think it's from More in Common, I can't remember exactly. Doesn't really matter. Because this was the latest poll that we have in the UK for seat results. You are just seeing light blue pop up everywhere. This is 7 months into what should be Labour's honeymoon period, and if it's not Reform taking their seats, it's Conservatives and in some places Lib Dems. Obviously, Scotland's taken out of the map because that's mostly going bright yellow, because Labour have been so useless they've revived the SNP. But this is just how ridiculous the online right sound, and this is the type of rhetoric I'm seeing from an awful lot of people, including the low seats and obviously an awful lot of Americans. Do you people just not concentrate? Do you just say the first thing that's on your mind? Because, I do that on Twitter as well, and it tends to get me in a bit of hot water because I either misspell something or say something very stupid. But again, Lawrence Fox is supposed to be the type of person who is running a political party that is deeply serious and trying to genuinely challenge the uniparty. And he's got nowhere near this level of success, and he's the one saying, oh, your party is finished. Yeah, good one. These people are just not serious. Just ignore them. That is genuinely my advice. And Laurence Fox's advice to stop this clearly finished party is that you should have realised you can only buy a certain amount of influence. Apparently 100 seats is a certain amount of influence. Britain is looking for a real political alternative where cancel culture is a thing of the past and free speech is paramount. Again, it's not exactly cancel culture when Tommy Robinson admits guilt to libel, is it? But anyway. After hubris, nemesis. Yes, well done, Laurence Fox. I mean, Laurence Fox, another one of these people who just seems to be drunk out of his mind most of the time and ends up really in a position where he should not be anywhere near his Twitter account, but is constantly near it, and ends up saying stupid things like this. Anyway, Rupert Lowe, who seems to be everyone's absolute favourite MP at the moment, which I completely understand why, by the way, is my favourite as well, effectively ended up, again, being quite astute. More awareness has been raised around rape and abuse of thousands of vulnerable British girls in the last few days than has ever happened before. As a country, this is a conversation we need to have. It shames our political class that it's taken a man of Elon Musk's influence to drag it into this light. And this is where the focus should remain, not elsewhere. Swift and brutal justice for those responsible. Tommy Robinson's role in exposing these gangs should be acknowledged. Again, I have acknowledged that. However, I also think that Tommy Robinson fans should acknowledge where he has also done the opposite of helped in getting these people in jail. But anyway, he is not right for reform. But I do think that his efforts in revealing those heinous crimes should not be overlooked. Again, fine. I am fine with that, and I want to make it clear. I am not overlooking that fact. However, Rupert also clearly agrees that Tommy Robinson is not right for reform. He doesn't go into detail as to why, and I think that's him trying to be astute. But as I say, the reason is because he's not helpful these days when it comes to exposing grooming gangs. So Rupert thanks Elon for his kind comments, and I'll go in that into a second. I just want to do what is right for my constituency and country. And then he makes it clear, Nigel is the leader of reform, he made Brexit happen, for that I will be grateful. I look forward to working with Nigel and the entire team to continue to hold this incompetent Labour Party to account, democratise our own party, win the next election and form a reform government. A power from outside the existing political establishment is the only way to achieve this, and it is desperately needed. And again, a lot of people say Rupert Lowe's this, free radical within Reform. He's doing his own thing. And it's just nonsense. This will be generally what most people in Reform think, including the MPs. I mean, the modern Tommy Robinson is not what he was 10, 20 years ago. He's got too much baggage on him now. Rupert Lowe obviously doesn't go into detail on it, but he does also acknowledge that he was helpful in the past. But why can't Nigel Farage and Richard Tice say it? Well, because frankly, Rupert Lowe is less well known than the other two, so he can get away with being a bit more lenient about this. But when you're on the mainstream media pretty much every day, hell, they run their own shows, and they are constantly asked questions, just nipping the Tommy Robinson questions in the bud is the best way to go forward. That's simply what is going on here. Again, I feel like I'm having to tell people who are political commentators what politics is all about, and I'm getting really fed up of it because these people are paid to do this professionally, and they don't seem to be able to do it. And people on Twitter as well, who've made it their entire thing on Twitter to be political commentators, they don't seem to understand real politics. And I'm getting really fed up that it is taking me, who is quite a small channel and a very small following on Twitter, has to keep replying to them to point this out. Anyway, as Rupert Lowe mentioned, Elon Musk did have praises to sing about Rupert Lowe. Elon Musk hasn't met Rupert Lowe, but his statements online that I have read so far make a lot of sense, and I totally agree. And Rupert Lowe does seem to be the unifier of people like me and people more to the dork right, which is fine. I mean, if he is the extent to which the right wing of parliamentarians will go, I am very, very happy with that. He's a free marketeer, he's a business owner, he obviously talks about the issues of immigration and plenty of other topics, and that is what his role is in Reform. A lot of people don't seem to understand that this is the way Reform are working at the moment. You've got 5 people within Reform in Parliament. There's only so much they can do, and to be effective, they effectively have to focus fire on certain things. Obviously, with Rupert Lowe, it's mainly about immigration. With Richard Tice, about business. With Lee Anderson, it's pensioners and working class issues and things like that. So when it comes to Nigel Farage, obviously he's the media man, the leader, the one going around the world, networking effectively. And then you've got the other guy who's, I'm really afraid to say his name escapes me, but the paper candidate, who effectively is there to say, hey, if you're thinking of doing this as a newbie, this is the sort of thing you'll be doing as an MP. If you're interested, we want to help you get to this position. Which is just, it's about as perfect as you could ask these people to do. But no, there are people saying, no, you have to make complete enemies of all of Islam. You need to constantly keep going on about this sort of thing. You need to keep going on about remigration and say magic words. And as I keep saying, these are people who are clearly influencing Elon Musk here. And what does it do? All it seems to do is cause fractures in the right for absolutely no reason whatsoever. Again, the poll I brought up before, we are making massive gains as Reform all over England. And the hope is over the next couple of years, up until over the next year, up until the 2026 election in Wales, hopefully they'll be making massive gains in Wales as well. It's already neck and neck and neck with Labour, Plaid Cymru and Reform. Reform are only wanting that momentum to go up and hopefully actually win at this point. When I went to my first meeting at my branch in Wales, their idea was, we just want to be, we want to be realistic. We want to just get in opposition and make our mark here. That's completely changed over the past few months. They are now, right, we're going to win this. This is ours to win. And what are the online right doing? Oh, well, it doesn't matter if they win. They're just being Tories. You think the party that has Rupert Lowe in, who wrote again most of the contract, is just Tories 2.0? These are people who, much like the left, just base their opinions on vibes. And as I say, it's not useful to anyone. All you've done with this episode is cause fractures, and as far as I care, you're not interested in trying to have accurate analysis. You're not interested in trying to actually move the right wing forward in Britain. You're just interested in what raises your own status. And I just can't handle it anymore. I've had enough of it. I've tried to be cordial over the past few months, saying this is where you're wrong in this, that, and the other way. And there are a few people who have said, yeah, okay, I get where you're coming from. I totally understand your position. And I appreciate those people more than anything. Josh has tried to do that. He's had cordial conversations with me. But the people who, frankly, I'm small, as I say, so I get that they're ignoring the advice, but I'm just getting to the point where this is just frustrating. You have to start understanding where you're going wrong. Otherwise, you're just going to be lolcows. And I don't want to see people turn into lolcows, because it doesn't help anyone. And it is the perfect way for the mainstream media, as you've seen with Lewis Goodall that I put in this video, to point at and say, look, they have no idea what they're doing. They're rank amateurs. They can't even keep loyalty going. And it's just not helpful. As I say, there are reasons to criticise Reform and Farage. It's fine to criticise them, but can we just make them accurate, please? But obviously people took advantage of this to reinstate their loyalty to Reform and Farage, which you really need at this point. It's going to be a long 5 years, I know, but we really need to hold the line and keep supporting Reform, because it's the only way you're actually going to see any sort of change to the two-party system we've had for the last, century really, but 30 years especially. So Matt Goodwin obviously says, Nigel Farage is the only person in British political history to win 2 nationwide elections with 2 different political parties, and that's all that needs to be said. Obviously, he's talking mostly about the EU elections, which included both UKIP and the Brexit Party, and now it's going to be Reform. And if he actually manages to win a general election, which I'm not going to lie, it's going to be hard work if that's even possible, then once again, it's just going to be proof that all the naysayers of Farage have no idea what they're talking about, but we'll only be able to find that out in about 4.5 years. Anyway, for some weird reason, Elon Musk was then praising Caliban because she was demanding yet another full public inquiry into the grooming gangs, which on a national level it's been shot down at every turn really, but on local levels they've already pretty much been done, and those alone pretty much give us what we actually need to punish the people we know who are overseeing this. I mean, a national one's probably useful for seeing how far it goes up to the top. But realistically, I think Kemi Badenoch's actually demanding this because she knows it's not going to happen, because this is actually the type of thing that will damage the Tories as much as Labour, because, why are you only demanding this now? You were in charge for 14 years. It's clearly something that she knows nothing will be done with, so it's quite safe to demand it like this. And as I say, Elon Musk, with his short attention span specifically for Twitter, just sees this and says, this is a good idea. But I want to remind people at this point that this is, again, basically copying Reform's homework. Because guess who was the only party to have anything in their manifesto, in this case contract, about the grooming gangs? It was Reform. Oh, what are they going to do? Deport all offenders holding dual citizenship, make child grooming an aggravated offence, improve safeguarding of victims and the vulnerable, i.e. have them not be vulnerable to be coerced into sex with certain people of a certain group of another person, and no bail for grooming gang offenders. Okay, there's not anything specific about a national inquiry in there, but how are you actually going to find these types of people who did this stuff and who deserve punishment? Oh, you're probably going to have a national inquiry. Again, not everything that's going to happen needs to be said directly in the contract. People don't seem to understand that. Anyway, despite most of this video being about debunking the absolute nonsense being chatted about Farage and reform, the most annoying part of this really to me is the fact that it's completely obfuscated the momentum that we had to keep Labour and to some extent the Tories under pressure to actually do something about grooming gangs, because while there have been some that have gone to jail, it is nowhere near to dealing with the epidemic that we have seen from said crimes. And I just find it weird that Elon Musk would start the day off criticising Farage like this, despite, as I said, they're the only party who have anything directly related to the grooming gangs in their manifesto/contract. And yet later in the day, Elon Musk will literally pin this tweet that is, again, I've gone through these before, but showing the heinous crimes that were done, I believe this was in Oxford, but that are similar to a lot of towns around the UK as well. And Musk says, for anyone doubting the severity and depravity of the mass gang rapes of little girls in Britain, go to the source material and read the court transcripts. I did. It is worse than you can possibly imagine. So I'm glad that he actually got it back on track again. But what the hell was the point in, for 5 hours of the day, going on about kicking out Farage? Because I'm not going to lie, in most of the mainstream media I have seen, that has been the headline news. Musk says Farage needs to be kicked out. Well done. You know, they were avoiding talking about the grooming gangs already, because all that stuff was being talked about on Twitter for days. GB News were the only channel actually covering it. And then all of a sudden what happens? You give the mainstream media a deflection, something that they can report instead of the stuff you've been talking about for days. Well done. You've ruined the momentum. Why? I don't even know. Oh, because you're surrounded by people that frankly are crabs, don't like Farage and don't want him to succeed, despite the fact he's been the most successful politician on an alternative party literally ever. Thanks, Elon. And again, he then started retweeting people like Matt Goodwin, who, while he is not a direct Reform member, is obviously a Reform activist. And this was a thread of him comparing newspapers reporting grooming gangs and having the keyword grooming gang in their article compared to a load of other hot topic issues, such as saying when something's racist or talking about the Grenfell Tower, things like that. And grooming gangs appear in the mainstream media sources, I think it's something like 5,000 times, if that, between the years 2011 and 2025. And then, as I say, things to do with George Floyd or Grenfell, they appear tens of thousands of times. And talking about the far right is like 250,000 times. It's just, he's showing how biased the mainstream were in reporting this, and given their inability to report on this issue, as I say, it is really, really stupid to give them any sort of deflection ever, and yet Elon Musk gave it to them for literally no reason. What's it changed? All it seems to have done is, as I say, given everyone who's in Reform and supporting Reform the chance to reinstate their loyalty to said party. Which I suppose Reform should be thankful. It's let them know who and who not to trust on this issue. But aside from that, it's just been a pointless deflection for the mainstream media. So again, well done for that, Elon. But as I say, luckily he was getting back on topic quite quickly after about 3 PM UK time, saying once again Starmer must go is a national embarrassment because it is alleged that he sent letters to police forces throughout Britain telling them not to investigate sexual exploitation of young girls, because he, again, allegedly suggested that even though the girls were below the legal age of consent, they had made informed choices. That was back in 2008. How true this is, I don't know. But again, this is Elon Musk's way of dealing with Twitter at the moment. Just fire from the hip, he sees something, he just throws out whatever his opinion is, and you get good and bad with it, it turns out. But again, the thing that's annoying me about the criticism of Farage is that, again, it's more nonsense criticism of Farage that he has seemed to have picked up from people talking nonsense about Farage on the online right, and it just needs to stop. Because it's not true, you're spreading fake news, it's a pointless sowing of disinformation that, in turn, has deflected from, well, things like this, things that probably would be reported in the news by now, had Elon Musk not thrown out that ridiculous tweet. But I'm going to end this video because this needs to be talked about. Carl Benjamin has been very disappointing when it comes to talking about Nigel Farage and reform over the past few months. Really disappointing. And this tweet pretty much sums up everything wrong that I can see from Carl Benjamin's mind. My only problem with Nigel and reform is that I have literally no idea what they actually want to do when they form a government. To which obviously I replied saying they have a contract, with the classic meme pointing at said contract. They have let you know what they will do, Carl. They have been talking about what issues they want to deal with, Carl, all over GB News, all over the mainstream media, all over the alternative media as well, I would add. I mean, frankly, you have to be willfully ignorant of what they have been talking about, let alone what they wrote in their contract mere months ago, I would add, to say something like this. It's either pure laziness or it's just going off the words of people that you interview. I don't know why this has to be said, but when you interview people, they don't necessarily tell you the truth. Ben Habib is obviously the person I'm talking about here. The democratisation of the party. I have seen you, Carl, bring this up on Twitter. It's total nonsense. I went through a whole video going through how it's total nonsense. Have you done your own due diligence to actually look into it? No, you didn't. You took Ben Habib at his word, despite the fact, at this point it's pretty much confirmed, Ben Habib is a total snake, who is happy to lie about reform, how it works, and what their policies are. He is a scorned ex-girlfriend of reform who couldn't get over the fact that because he didn't win a seat, he wasn't needed in the position that he was in. Now, when it comes to other people who are in literally the exact same position of Ben Habib, they had the grace to say, I understand why this is happening. I am totally fine to keep supporting you. I am fully behind the contract. I'm fully behind the other things that you are doing. Please carry on. I will support you however I can. Ben Habib couldn't do that because effectively he's not leader of a party. And now he's saying, oh, I want to be leader of reform, which is really funny because reform at the same time is this completely finished party that has nowhere to go. But at the same time, everyone is demanding that they completely change because they're doing so well. Well, if you think you can do better than them, guess what? There's alternative parties that you can go to. UKIP's still a thing, by the way. Why don't you go join them? If you can prove to me that you can outmaneuver Farage from the right using UKIP, I am happy to eat my words on this. But guess what? None of them are doing that. They are going out of their way to try and undermine reform. And as much as they try and say they're critical friends and things like this, it's just total nonsense. Critical friends ideally would be giving them either good advice or giving them genuine criticism, but no. It is nothing but lies. It is nothing but trying to degrade Farage and reform. Why? God knows why, because also every time they bring up clips from, say, the Winston Marshall show, it's totally out of context. Steve Edgington is no better on this, by the way. I frankly consider him a bad actor. It's been absolute nonsense from an awful lot of the online right and online right adjacent people, and I'm just at a point where I'm fed up with it. I am totally fed up with it. You are not learning anything. You're not realising that you're going down a path that is not only useless, but also just completely wrong. It's not got any basis in reality. And it's landed on you saying possibly one of the most wrong things I've ever seen on Twitter. We know exactly what Nigel and Reform are going to do when they get into government. They wrote 28 whole pages on it. And it is stuff that, frankly, me and the online right are 90% or more happy with. And yet here you are pretending it doesn't exist, pretending that it's just all vibes. No. Saying this is entirely vibes-based, and I am nothing but disappointed in this, because as people who follow the channel know, Carl Benjamin is the main reason I even have this channel. And I just find it so disappointing that this is the route he has gone down. It is not one of integrity. It is not one that shows me that he is willing to do his due diligence and find out what is true, what isn't, and try and analyse reality. He's one that is going off vibes, wants things that are never going to be voted in, and is happy to pull cotton wool over his eyes to, for God knows what reason, by the way, I don't know. Keep Lotus Eaters going, keep the audience that has captured him happy, I have no idea. It's all nonsense, though. You were supposed to make them Lotus Eaters to inform, you know, to rise up against the dirty smear merchants. But frankly, saying this sort of thing about Nigel and Reform, how are you any different? Seriously. Like, you want to talk about critical friends. I am a critical friend. There is no way ever that I will openly say I want Carl to fail, don't want him to be the type of person who has a presence on the internet. I don't want I don't ever want that for him. No, I want you to be better. I want you to succeed. I want you to do the job that I thought you were always in favour of, that you were going to do, that you inspired me to do. And I'm the person here having to correct you on things that are not even difficult to find. They're everywhere, all over the place. All you have to do is watch a bit of Farage every now and then. Just take a look at his feed. People saying he's not doing enough to talk about immigration and things like that. My God. It was said on stream yesterday, once again, by John, that there was an argument in the Worcester Club Discord about, once again, Farage isn't doing enough, I feel. So John just went through his Twitter and posted pretty much every time he brought up immigration. And throughout December, I think it was 20 days into December or something like that, he basically made, on average, about a tweet or two a day about it. I mean, if that's not going on about immigration, I don't know what is. But here we have people talking about how Farage isn't doing enough. He's avoiding difficult questions like this, and it's just nonsense. I've had enough of it. Please do your due diligence. Don't just take idiots at their word. Actually do your own research, as is always said by the online right, and then they never do it. And you'll find yourself making much more informed commentary and analysis, which is what the Lotus Eaters subscribers pay for. But anyway, I just felt like that needed to finally be off my chest. I've been kind of ignoring what Carl's been saying about it for some time now, but it's boiled over now. I mean, 2025, this is the year where we need momentum to keep up and keep going, and there are people out there that, as I say, are just crabs. Like, you know, Reform are doing very well. Nigel is doing very well. Better than anyone could have expected at this point, and we have crabs here trying to pull them back in the bucket, and I'm fed up with it. Completely fed up with it. Anyway, I think I have covered the enormous drama from yesterday. As you can tell, I'm not very happy about this because momentum was all going swimmingly, and then the absolute idiot had to actually listen to people around him that frankly don't know what they're talking about, which leads to Musk not knowing what he's talking about. As I say, overall, I think this has been a bit of a gift to Reform. It's allowed them to once again reinstate that Tommy Robinson won't have anything to do with the party. The most I'll say is that, yeah, he may have done good things in the past, sure, but ever since, pretty much, he's not been great, not a good fit. As Rupert Lowe says, an active liability, others in Reform are happy to say, which I am totally on board with. Once again, we are talking about electoral politics here, and it has to be asked, is this position going to gain you votes or lose them? It's just obvious from every metric that supporting Tommy Robinson is going to lose you votes. So why would they do it? They're obviously not going to do it, and call them cowards all you want, but at the end of the day, we're trying to destroy Labour and Tories here, and if that means throwing Tommy Robinson under the bus, then so be it, in my opinion. If you can't handle that, stay online, stay complaining about it. We are fine to have you be loud so that we can point to you and say, no thank you. To those of you that are more sympathetic to Tommy Robinson and think I've been unduly harsh, but at the same time are open to Reform and understand why they're doing what they're doing, Reform are totally fine with you. And I am fine with you as well. There's a difference between being sympathetic to Tommy Robinson and being a sycophant. It is the sycophants that I am exclusively complaining about here. And clearly Elon Musk is surrounded by people like that. And just from every metric, when it comes to electoral politics, it's electoral suicide to be on that side of things. So I'm glad that Reform have reinstated their position. Hopefully they'll stop being asked questions about it soon. And it's entirely on Elon Musk that this was even a conversation in the first place. As much good as I think he does, I think he also causes some issues sometimes, but as I say, this issue appears to be turning into a bit of a blessing, because frankly, it's letting Reform who to trust and who not to trust. It's hopefully going to put a pin in the Tommy Robinson thing, and we can finally get back to having a go at all the people that overlooked and didn't do anything about the mass rape of girls in British streets. So as I say, I think that's pretty much it. Right, shilling time. Obviously, yesterday we had a very good Laughing at the Guardian with Stelios from the Lotus Eaters, so go watch that. So the next Laughing at the Guardian will be in 2 weeks on Saturday, so do come along to that. We were supposed to be continuing the Antiquity streams over on the Worcester Club from today, but I've only just been informed today that it probably actually won't be possible for about another month, so I'm afraid there's no Antiquity streams for a while. However, we are still continuing with the Tosh streams. So tomorrow it is Tosh Talks. We will be doing predictions for 2025, which, to be honest, at this point, I think we have already kind of ruined every sort of prediction that's going to make 2025 ridiculous, but we'll do it anyway. We're making a bingo card out of it. Do come along. It will be good fun. videos from me out as and when I can make them. They're pretty much daily at this point. If you like my channel, please do subscribe. If you really like my channel, please do become a member, send super chats and super thanks. They are great ways to keep the channel going, keep me posting on the daily, and basically keep everyone happy. Anyway, with that, I would like to thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.